Welcome to Papa's Workshop. Today is part 2 of building my table saw sled. Now in part 1 I said no frills, and that's what I meant. And I built a table saw sled that was within 4/1000ths of an inch from square on a 24-inch span. That's not bad. So in today's video I'm adding two things. I'm adding a safety block on the back to be able to keep the fingers out of the way, and I'm adding dust collection. Yeah, that's right. Dust collection has been key in my shop over the past few months. So let's get started today. Now this table saw sled is within 4/1000ths of an inch being square on 24 inches. I think that is crazy accurate, and I am good with that. But one of the things that really bothers me is on the back, there is no protection. If my fingers are in the way and I'm pushing a piece of wood through, my thumb is more than likely going to get cut. And that's something that I need to be able to correct. I did not have that on the first table saw sled, and I'm surprised you guys didn't mention that as many times as you have seen me use the table saw sled. But I'm going to correct that today, and I want to put a safety block on here. The other thing that I wanted to show you on this stop block, I went ahead and put some 8/32 screws through this. Now these screws are 3.5 inches long to be able to go through this block. But I wanted to do that only because I was afraid over time that this glue joint might give away. So I went ahead and secured that, and I have two nuts on here. That acts like a lock nut. That'll hold it so it will not come loose. So now, again, it works extremely well, and I'm very happy with it. It does not move. The cam is easy to adjust and move to any place that I want, and I can lock it down. Fantastic feature, and I do highly recommend you doing that to yours. Now a couple months ago I cut my main line for my dust collection, and I added this new drop, and this is actually over my workbench, and it's right near the table saw. Now I have some other projects going on here, but I wanted to be able to show you that this is where I'm going to go ahead and add the hose to this drop right here on my dust collection that will go over to the table saw. Now the first thing I want to do is measure. This is the max height that this blade will go, and that's 2 3/8 of an inch. The stop block needs to be higher than that. So I'm going to make my stop block about 2 5/8 of an inch. That'll give a little bit of the safety room so that it won't cut through the top of the block. To be able to set my stop block at 2 3/4, I can use the cut line in here to be able to do it, and just slide that over 2 3/4 and set it, and I'm done. The other way that I like to do it is just bring the sled up to where the blade is near where I can put the tape measure right in there, and then I can actually move that ever so slightly and get it exactly where that I want it. And to me that's even more accurate. So this now is 2 3/4, and I'm going to take a piece of the 3/4 inch plywood, and I'm going to cut several blocks that I'll glue together to be able to make my safety block. Cutting these blocks to be square on this new sled is so easy, and I absolutely love it. This is fantastic, and this cam stop block is working great. The next question that you have to ask, if the blade is at the tallest point and my fence is 1.5 inches, if I ran this saw blade all the way through to that point to cut a piece of wood, how much of the blade sticks past? Well, if I set that right there, and I take my blocks that I'm going to use for my safety block, and I set it right in that position, this is sufficient to be able to protect my fingers, and it's not going to come through. So that's going to be perfect, and this is the maximum. It's going to be extremely rare, if ever, that I actually ever go to the maximum. All I'm going to do to be able to put this together is use the Starbond CA glue. And again, I'm going to have a link in the description so that you can take advantage of a 15% discount. I'll spray the activator on this side. And then I'll just simply put that right up in place, squeeze, and it's done. I'll do the same thing for the next one. That's how easy that is. I'll let that bond for just a moment. I took this over to the sanding station, and all I really need to do is just a real quick sanding on the four sides. And the other thing that I wanted to do was just a real simple round over. I didn't even want to put it onto the router. It wasn't necessary. Using the sander to do a small round over was very easy to do. To be able to mount this block, all I did is mark the center point here. Now this was 2 3/4 of an inch, so that would be 1 3/8 of an inch for the center. Then I'm just going to take a regular square and I'm going to mark the center line right here. I'll put my block in place. Now I'm putting this block 1/4 of an inch high. I have this little small 1/4 inch piece of plywood that I have sitting there because I do not want this block sitting on the table saw itself. So I put that where the line matches, slide that over, lock my cam in place, and now it's not going to move. It's going to be exactly where it needs to be. Now I'm going to put 2 screws in here to be able to hold it in place. And what I'm doing is using this cabinet mounting screw that has the pan head on it, which will hold this in place very well. It also has a self-tapping threads to be able to help drive it right through into the wood. I want to make sure that these 2 screws do not come anywhere where that blade is going to come through. So we know the blade is going to come into the center, so this is going to be offset to each side. The last thing I want to do before screwing this in place is I want to put a clamp on it just to help hold it in place. I don't need a lot of pressure, but I don't want it moving around. That should be plenty. Now I showed you how I tightened this, and it was just barely tight. But what I'm going to do now is just flip this around, and you're really not going to be able to see it, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to barely snug this clamp to be able to hold it. And the reason that I'm doing that is so I have really full access to be able to put the drill up here to put these 2 screws in place. And that completes having this block in here for safety. Now, believe it or not, this block also is the first part of the dust collection. The reason that I say that this safety block is also part of the dust collection is that with my old table saw Sled, as I would run the wood through it, there was a tremendous amount of sawdust that would shoot out of this hole that was in here, this slot, and it would just throw tons of sawdust out. Well, with this safety block in place, it no longer can do that. So now I've got to be able to capture that dust on the top side. That's next. Now let's talk the saw guard itself. I'm going to make it out of a clear acrylic material, and I want to have it go this full distance. I'm also going to make it this high. Now we know that this is 4 inches high already, so if this was completely down over the blade, it would be completely enclosed. But I also, of course, have material that will come through at various thicknesses. So I'm thinking about putting a block on the back side with a slot, just a very simple slot that will be able to slide up and down as the thickness of the wood changes. Now I know from earlier we measured that this table saw blade will only come up 2 3/8 of an inch high above my sled. So my slots, if I make these slots 2 1/2 inches, that gives a little room to play, and I can then move that up and down as the thickness of the wood changes. The nice thing about that, when I have my wood in here to cut, I can drop the guard right down on top of the wood and be able to again have that table saw guard cover the entire wood. And then all I have to do is attach the hose and feed it over to the dust collection. So that's the plan anyway. Let's see if we can make that work. Now I'm going to use this 1/8 inch acrylic that I had on hand. Now just in the event that you do plan on doing this in your shop, I would highly recommend going ahead and purchasing 1/4 inch acrylic to be able to do that. It's going to be stronger and it's going to hold up better than this 1/8 inch material. I'm using my tape and glue method with the Starbond CA glue to be able to hold this material down. Now I'm using the auxiliary wasteboard like I've used very often. Again, is with the glue and tape. And then my project is actually glued and taped on also. What I'm doing now is just making the adapters for my table saw sled. These are the adapters that I need, but unfortunately I don't have a piece of the MDF that's large enough. So this is the size of the MDF that's on the table, and it's going to cut out these 3 parts. Then I'll take another piece of the MDF and cut out this last remaining part. So for now, I made a square with 0 cut depth, and that way that piece will not cut out. To be able to simulate, just to verify, you can see over on this screen that that is the only item that will cut out. And they are cutting all the way through, and I am not using the tabs because I'm using the glue and tape method. All of the adapters that I have were designed in easel, and when I went to do the carving today, my computer and easel did not get along. So I went out, found another piece of the 1/2 inch MDF, and decided to go ahead and cut it square, and used a V-carve to be able to design the same exact adapters and carve it on the new machine. The nice thing about this, I did find a piece that was large enough that I could cut out all of the adapters that I need at one time, rather than having to come back for a second carving. Now, this also leads itself to be able to go ahead and show you how I designed these adapters in V-carve Desktop. And the first thing I did is just took a measurement of the size of the board that I had to work with. And then from there, I'm headed to the computer. In V-carve Desktop, this is the adapter file that I set up. I'm going to cut all my adapters here. This file only took about 5 minutes to be able to create, so I didn't lose a lot of time. So let me show you how I went through the process to be able to create this file and these adapters to be able to carve. First thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and open a new file, and I want this to be single-sided. We're making this 12 by 12, and it's a 1/2 inch thick. The Z0 position is going to be on the surface. Now for this one, I'm going to do this in the center just because I haven't done one in the center before. So I think you need to be able to see that. Don't need anything down here, so I'm just going to click OK. Now, All that I need to be able to do for this is just click on the circle. I can click any size that I want, but I'm going to come over here and I have diameter and I want 3 inches. And so there's my 3-inch circle. And I'll have apply and I'll close that. Then from there I'm just going to highlight it and click it one more time and just bring it over into this area. Doesn't really matter at this point. Now I'm going to click the circle again, and this time I'm going to do one circle that is going to be 2.3 inches. And see, that circle is done. I have create. What I want to be able to do is put this circle inside and have it centered. So I'm just going to highlight this right there, but I need to be able to highlight both of the vectors, and then I can click that, and now it's centered. Now I can grab this center point and just slide it right down to where I want it. And there we go. While I have this, I'm going to go ahead and hit Control C and Control V. And when that happens, you put one right directly on top. And it's highlighted. So I'm just going to grab it and pull it over. And there's my second one. So those are the two that I need. So now the next thing I'll need to do is just close this out, and I'm going to go over to the polygon. I want to be able to select that, and I want to be able to use 6 sides. I want the radius of this to be the 3 inches, so I'm going to create. So I'll close that. I'm going to highlight this, click it a second time, and I want to bring that right down into this bottom corner. Now I will take this second one and I'm going to go ahead and move it up into my top corner. And that takes care of both of those. Now I want to be able to grab just this. I'm going to click here and just highlight that. And you notice going from the bottom and upward to the left, it just captures both of those. I don't need to have everything highlighted. So I'm going to bring that over right about there. That is good. So I'll click anywhere to get out of it. Now I need 2 circles. One circle will fit inside of here. Is going to be just this size right there. So Control C and Control V. So I'm going to take that and slide it right over into this area. The next circle I want to make is going to be larger. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, and I need this circle at 4.52 inches. And with that done, I'm just going to go ahead and hit apply. I think I've got 2 circled there, and I do. I want to be able to center them. There we go. Next, I want to go ahead and double click on this whole object. We're going to move it down just a little bit to get it back onto our surface. And all of our design work is done. Next thing I want to do is click right up here, and I'm going to go over to the tool paths. Now the tool paths are very important. There's 2 tool paths that we're going to use. For these inner circles, they need to be cutting on the inside. And for the outer circles, I want these to cut on the outside. Now I want to be able to select all of these inside circles. So I'm going to highlight the first one, hold down the Shift key, and then just click on the other ones. Now I want to show you something here that's very important. You see how these are dotted lines? That's a dotted line. And then this is a dotted line. This one has a dotted line, but it also has a solid line. There's 2 vectors on top of each other there. So I'm going to come back and just click on this again. Click it one more time to bring up the handles, and watch this. Bring that over. I'm going to delete that because I don't need it. And now let's click on it. There is my single vector. I hope you can catch that and don't make that mistake. So now I'm going to go ahead and highlight the rest of these again. Over in this section, I am going to click on the toolpath. I've already checked this information. So we're going to click on the toolpath. We're going to start at the surface. I'm going to go down just a little bit more than the thickness of the material. Remember, our thickness of the material was 0.5. I'm going to go down 0.55. I am using an end mill 1/8 inch. I want this to cut on the inside. So I select on the inside. I can do the climb. I don't need anything else. And then down here, I'll just calculate that. Yes, it is going to cut all the way through. That is okay. And that's what it's going to look like. So if I reset the preview, and real quick, that's all there is to it. Now let's go back and select the other. We're going to click anywhere. Now I'm going to click the outside. I'm doing the same thing. I'm holding the shift key down. And there we go. All of them are selected. Let's go back over to the toolpath again, and it's going to be the exact same thing. First thing I need to do is close out of this. Now I'm going to select toolpath. All of this is exactly the same exact bit. This time we want to go to the outside. Everything else is fine. And I will have profile 2. That's good. I'll calculate it. Yes, it's going to cut all the way through, and that is fine. Now I went ahead and changed the names for this, because this goes back to the original file that I had. This is for my table saw sled for my inside cuts, and then the table saw sled for my outside cuts. The next step that I want to do is just save the files, and I click on that icon. Right now there's no visible tool paths. So if I click right down at this point, I will have both tool paths selected, and they will both show in this area. At this point, I want to verify the processor that I'm using, which is the X-Carve in inches for the G-code. That works perfectly fine for my setup. And then I would save the tool paths. Since I've already done that, I am not going to click again on the save. But that's how simple it is. Once it's in the computer and you're ready to be able to carve it, you'll be opening up the Universal G-Code Center, open up the file, and you're ready to carve. So I'm going to close this, and we're going to go ahead and exit out. Now, because I'm using the same bit to be able to cut the inside of this tool path and on the outside, I was able to send both of the tool paths in one file to the computer. The nice thing about this, it will cut one, and then it'll go and cut the next one without any change of anything. And there you can see it. It just goes from one tool path to the other. And I really like this feature. But of course, you have to be using the same bit. You have to be able to save it as one file. And from there, it works just fine. So the total carve time was just over 10 minutes. 10 minutes and 20 seconds. Another reason that I like the glue and tape method so much is that it's very easy to be able to remove from the wasteboard. I just use a little putty knife, lift it up, and it breaks that glue, and it just comes right off. No tabs make it easier, so I don't have to worry about a lot of sanding and cleanup and getting rid of those tabs, and I like that also. So these pieces just come out, and they're literally ready to be glued together and installed. Cutting this project out on this machine actually goes a whole lot faster The easel software had estimated 29 minutes to be able to do this same exact file. Cleanup is real easy also. All you need to do is just pull the tape loose and hit it with a vacuum cleaner and you're done. Cleanup is a breeze. And now I'll be ready for the next project in just a moment. It's time to install these new adapters, and this slips onto my 4-inch ductwork real easy. It's a nice snug fit. And you can get a close-up there so you can see how that fits. Right now it's flush, and I'm ready for the second part. This part is just glued in with a starbond CA glue, and then I can attach the hose to that. And there you go. It works great. I've got fantastic suction, and I'm ready for the next step. I opened up VCarve Desktop, and I chose to design my end bracket here in this software. Once I had finished the first one, I just copied and pasted and put my second one in position. Now I used the exact same steps that I had done earlier in this video where I made the circle adapters. So I'm not going to repeat that here. So at this point, I'm ready to be able to save the toolpath and begin my carving of the end brackets. When I use the center of the project as my XY0 position, I do not use the 3-axis touch plate. The only thing I do is set the router where I need to have it placed, and then over in the universal G-code sender, I will set that to the 0. And when I hit the reset X and reset Y, that brings it down to the 0. Now attach the touch plate just to be able to do the 0 for the Z-axis. Now that I've completed the probe, all I need to do is just move the Z-axis down to the position. And now I'm ready to carve. So I turn on the router, I hit send, and the router begins to carve. It's just that simple with the universal G-code sender. As designed, it carved out the slot for the screws, and then it started cutting the outside. Perfect. And this took a grand total of 3 minutes, 42 seconds to be able to carve. This is a whole lot easier than cutting it out by hand and a lot faster. Now I want to go ahead and put the threaded inserts in. I've already drilled the pilot hole, and now I'm drilling a hole to be able to accept the threaded insert. To be able to insert this into the hole, all you do is just get it started. It's threaded on the outside, and you use an Allen wrench to be able to screw it right into position, and it screws down flush with the surface of the board. Now it's time to be able to carve the knobs. Now in the easel software, I already had a file saved for these knobs that I have carved out before, and I used in the shop quite a bit. So I went ahead and set it up on this MDF, which is medium density fiberboard, and cut the knobs that I needed. Now I only need 4 knobs for this project, but I went ahead and cut out 5 just to be able to have an extra one. So here's a look at all 4 of the knobs complete. And you can see it just took a little bit of sanding to clean up the edges and insert the bolts. Here's a look at how this is going to work. I'll be able to unscrew the knobs, raise up the table saw guard, and then tighten it back into position. All that's left is to build the guard. To glue the sides together, I'm going to be using the JB weld, which is a plastic weld made for the acrylic. So this should hold really well. I've never used this particular product before, so it's going to be a little bit of an experiment. I used a 3/4 inch piece of plywood that was 3 inches by 1.5 inches to be able to create the support for the top of this acrylic. Now after I had everything screwed on, I realized I forgot to put the hole into this top. So I just set up a temporary wasteboard and was still able to get it cut without having to take it all apart. And yes, I'm using a glue and tape method to be able to hold everything down, and this actually worked really, really well. But I wouldn't recommend this method. That cut just a beautiful hole. That is fantastic. There's no sanding even required for this. That looks great. And the good thing about it is I didn't have to take all this stuff off because I forgot to drill the hole. Okay, I'm trying to get organized to make sure I have everything that I need to be able to attach this piece over onto this edge. Now with the hole drilled, that sure makes things a lot easier. But I have the speed square to make sure that it is going to be nice and square to the table. I've got tape on each end to be able to clamp it down and hold it in place. And I've got the popsicle stick that actually came with the glue, and it even comes with the little mixing tray. Now the goal is just to be able to use the popsicle stick and put a very thin bead of the glue along this edge and then slip it in place, make sure it's square, and tape it down. Let's see how that goes. So now I have glue along the whole entire edge. Let's see if we can get this in place. And I want to just raise this up a little bit, set that right where I want it to be, and then start pushing that down. Put a piece right here in the middle. That's good. And we'll check for square. That looks good, guys. All that's left now that the glue is dry is just to be able to pull off all the tape. This actually works really well, and this video is getting a little bit long. But this is a thin plexiglass, and I would definitely recommend getting a 1/4 inch thick. I think it would work better. But all in all, I'm very happy with this. It's going to be a nice addition. Hi everyone, thank you for watching my video today. If you like the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below and the little bell next to it so you'll be notified on the different videos that I upload. Also, check out the videos over here to be able to stay up to date on the happenings in my shop. So again, thank you for watching my videos.